We're going to talk some balls in the college football playoffs.
4 downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right, here we go. So, Caleb, I love these projections, and everybody's guessing. It seems so odd to me, especially when you watch the NFL, and I watched a lot of that last night. You know exactly what team is going to be playing who, but college football is not like that. So I've said before, this is a TV show with the selection committee. This is a TV show with what they put together on these upcoming playoffs. And Caleb, I'm a firm believer that with the TV show intact, that you need to be really mindful of a couple of different things. And that is, we're talking about it, right? You've got Brad Edwards. You've got all these different college football guys that are talking about it. We're talking about other people making the decision, which really is as college football can be. And I think that's ultimately what this committee wants. Let's dive into it. 4 downs, again, brought to you by Medicare Misty. What down is it first, Coop? Tell us what to do.
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
All right.
Coop here. First down.
All right. First down is this. Will the Vols host Ohio State? Now, Ohio State has a higher strength of schedule, but I think the Vols are better right now. But let's start with strength of the schedule. How do you think that'll factor in, Caleb?
I think it'll factor in a lot. Ohio State ever so slightly has a better strength of schedule. And this is across all metrics. If you do FPI, if you do standard, just record of opponents, opponents, if you factor in home versus away, when you take everything into account, Ohio State does have the better strength of schedule. But again, it is ever so slightly. By most metrics, Tennessee is in the 10 to 15, about the 10 to 14 range, and Ohio State's in about the 7 to 10 range. There's never more than 3 to 4 spots separating Tennessee and Ohio State in strength of schedule.
Well, we talk a lot about strength of schedule in this thing, and I think all the contenders need to look at their schedule in the off season as a way that they could help themselves. I guess, I don't know. We'll see what happens to those undefeated teams. Well, there's not a lot left now. What down, Coop?
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
All right, let me throw this at you, Caleb. Ohio State has more quality wins. Now, I'm supposed to say, wait, you have the University of Tennessee that plays in the SEC, so that's a better conference, right? But you think that Ohio State has more quality wins.
Well, I don't think. It's just, unfortunately for Tennessee, a fact. Quality wins, I mean, you have to go based on rankings. Now, if you ask me, on a neutral field, I think you and I both agree Alabama would beat Indiana or Penn State. Is that fair to say?
Yes, no doubt about it.
But I think there's no doubt that we have to count Indiana and Penn State as quality wins because both teams are college football playoff teams. Not only are both teams college football playoff teams, they're also both ranked ahead of Alabama. So when you take that into account, I don't think you can look at Ohio State's resume and Tennessee's resume and say, well, Tennessee did beat Alabama and they play in the SEC, even though Ohio State beat 2 college football playoff teams. Tennessee beat 1 team that might get in the college football playoff, which we're going to discuss later. And if they do, it will generate outrage because a lot of people don't want to see them get into the college football playoff.
I think the committee might. We're referring to that red team to the south, as Butch Jones used to call it. What down, Coop?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
Well, thank you, Coop. The Vols' worst loss is better than Ohio State's worst loss.
Yes. And now, to the untrained eye, what do you mean? Ohio State lost to Michigan and Tennessee lost to Arkansas. That's the same caliber team this year, Arkansas and Michigan, for anybody who's been watching. But Tennessee lost to Arkansas on the road. Ohio State lost to Michigan at home. Now, you can debate college basketball doesn't do this or didn't used to, but some people don't think you should factor in home and away with schedule strength. I think you should. By that logic, Tennessee should get credit for having a better, worse loss. However, I got to throw a couple of caveats in here before we get to fourth down, which is that Ohio State's quote-unquote good loss, Dave, is technically better than Tennessee's good loss because Ohio State's good loss is to Oregon. Tennessee's is to Georgia. Both are on the road. But Oregon's ranked higher than Georgia. Oregon's undefeated and number 1. Georgia has 2 losses. And Ohio State lost that game by 1 point, or Tennessee lost theirs by 2 touchdowns. So while Ohio State's worst loss is worse than Tennessee's worst loss, their good loss, I'm sorry, looks significantly better than Tennessee's good loss.
Oof, man, Caleb's bringing the objectivity. 4 downs brought to you by Medicare Misty. The 4th down's always the best one. That's a possession down.
19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. 4th down.
You say that politics favors the Vols. Why?
Yes. So let's just take the most basic level first. Recency bias favors Tennessee. I mean, if you see how Ohio State played, we're going to talk a little bit later about Tennessee peaking at the right time. Dave, you bring up this is a TV show. If it's a TV show, don't you want the team that you think is better in the moment advancing a little further?
Yes, I think you do. And you like the fact that Tennessee's offense has shown some pop lately because, let's face it, a lot of people want to see scoring.
Exactly. Now, this is where, and I stand by all my criticism of the SEC on this, but this is where a comment Dave has been making for 2 years comes into play. Guys, I don't care that the committee is technically a separate entity from ESPN. ESPN holds the college football playoff. ESPN holds the purse. The SEC is going to get preferential treatment because of that. So with Tennessee versus Ohio State, you don't think Greg Sankey can make a call, Dave, and just kind of be like, be ashamed if we did something that could mess with y'all's contracts and things like that.
Well, I think that could be a factor. Now, I think it would be a factor, especially if you were talking about Tennessee and Indiana, okay? Because you would go to that committee and you would say, you're not going to host a playoff game at Indiana, right? You're going to do that at Neyland Stadium. So Neyland Stadium should help you. But in the case with Ohio State, if you look at it from a national perspective and not an SEC perspective, then the 2 home fields are pretty comparable, right?
They're pretty much even. There's an 800-seat difference between the two. Tennessee, I tried to track last night who makes more money. Tennessee has made more money in the last couple of years than Ohio State, despite Ohio State being in the college football playoff race both times after Tennessee was eliminated. So Tennessee, I think, is a more profitable program. The stadiums Ohio State has about 800 more seats. But the most important thing, Dave, is I think we're not paying attention to this. I think a lot of Ohio State fans are very apathetic about this playoff because they want Ryan Day fired. And
see, that's where I thought you would go with one of the downs, because it's hard for me to say that a crowd's not going to show up for a playoff game, right?
Right.
But there's a part of me that thinks that some of those Ohio State fans might look at it kind of like, was it Stan Heath that won the SEC basketball tournament at Georgia?
Frank. Oh my gosh. What? Now I got to look. It wasn't Stan Heath. It was another guy.
Dennis Felton?
Dennis Felton. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So he wins that game. And it was like none of the Georgia fans were excited to win that basketball tournament because now you're going to extending. So I think they look at that. You're not going to say go out and lose a playoff game just so that you can fire your coach. At least I wouldn't think so. But I do wonder, based off what I've heard from Ohio State peeps, I do wonder if that will be somewhat of a factor. Whereas if you hold one at Tennessee in Knoxville, Neyland Stadium, I'll say this, with the backdrop of that as a television show, I would take Neyland Stadium just a little bit over Ohio State Stadium or whatever they call it.
Ohio Stadium, and that's what it's called.
Yes.
I would too. I mean, and I think and this is where so if you take in Tennessee has a little bit more of an edge with Neyland Stadium, there's the direct tie to the SEC on ESPN, and there's the recency bias. All the politicking favors Tennessee, whether or not you think they deserve to host a playoff game.
I've got one other politicking that I think favors Tennessee. Did you watch that game last night, Sunday night in the NFL? Did you see the weather
last night's game?
Yeah. Did you see the weather there in Buffalo? You don't want a weather game. You don't. And you're less likely to have a weather game in Knoxville than you would at Ohio Stadium. So I think that those politics help Tennessee as well.
I never thought about that. You're absolutely right. Now, that would help more if you were a deep South team like in Georgia or Alabama or Florida, because as you know, it can get cold up in the mountains in Knoxville in certain times. Almost get like a Midwest climate. But you were right. It's still more likely to have better weather in Knoxville than in Ohio. Whereas, I mean, I don't think I've ever watched a Big Ten game with clear skies in November. Have you in your life?
No. I mean, it's depressing sometimes to think about. And to me, again, I say it's a television show. I would rather take a 30% chance that you have horrible weather in Knoxville than a 40% chance that you have horrible weather in Columbus.
Yeah, the Super Bowl. Look at them. They hosted in New York one year, and everybody freaked out because they thought that there could be bad weather coming. And then they decided, nope, not doing this again. The Super Bowl every year is going to be in sunny weather or in a dome. Period. End of story. And they do that for the national championship game. So you're right. That is politicking. So look, at the root of this, I have to be honest. And you're right, Matt. I know many of our listeners won't like me for saying this, but Tennessee, Ohio State, objective look at resumes, Ohio State does deserve the home game over Tennessee. But I think politicking is going to favor Tennessee.
Yep, I tend to agree with that. And I'll throw this out there as well. I think a big factor will be the overall feel of the programs. I think they will factor that in. I do wonder this, and tell me if this is being conspiracy theorist, Dave, and maybe we can make this a poll question. Do you think the College Football Playoff Committee will favor the SEC, favor Tennessee, or give Tennessee the hose like has been the case with Dylan Sampson not being on the Doak Walker, with all the various Heisman moments that haven't happened for Tennessee? Doesn't it seem like Tennessee gets hosed more times than not, or am I wrong?
It does, but it does. I mean, again, there is like a seeming of that. I mean, you can go back to Johnny Majors and the Heisman in '56 losing to Paul Hornung. Truth be told, though, the biggest hose we sometimes overlook, the biggest hose was that Jim Brown didn't win the Heisman that year. He should have won it over Majors or Paul Hornung. But yes, there has been a long history of Tennessee getting hosed. I've made the case that Tennessee players should absolutely not show up for award ceremonies when they're invited to them anymore. They should just not show up.
There you go. I get my Heisman ballot today. So do you want me to tell you who I'm voting for?
I don't think you can you?
I can't. I'm not supposed to.